Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Don't fall, Tigger. Today's reading comes from 18th century Jewish mystical Rabbi Baal Shem Tov. It is the aim of my pilgrimage on earth to show my brethren, by living demonstration, how one may serve God with merriment and rejoicing. For he who is full of joy is full of love for men and for all creatures. So if you would like, please take a moment with me to contemplate today's reading during a few moments of silence. So centered here and now, in this perfect moment, I rejoice. I rejoice in the knowledge that God is all there is, that flowing through each and every one of us is the God of love. That we are each a living demonstration of that love, of that joy. I know that we are each blessed and that we are each a blessing. And so this time together is indeed perfect. That as the message comes through Reverend Cece, we each receive exactly what is ours to receive, so that we may carry it out into our community and into the world for all of our fellow creatures. And I am grateful. I am grateful for everyone present, for all things that transpire here now in this one perfect moment. And most of all, I am grateful for each of us on this pilgrimage through the one life. And so it is.
And so it is.
When I got here this morning, the air conditioning was on, and I tried to turn it over to heat, and it kept clicking back to cool, so I thought I better check and make sure it was still on heat. So today's reading from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov is one of my favorite historical rabbis. He was the founder of Hasidism, which is a mystical branch of Orthodox Judaism. And his followers were called the happy ones. I love that, the happy ones. He said, the ability to be joyous by discerning the good and joyous within every experience is considered a biblical command. The ability to be joyous. That's not what I was taught the Bible was all about. Was that what you were taught? I like his interpretation, that to be joyous is a command from the Bible. And it makes so much sense to me. He lived in the 18th century, and there was a move. I'll move this for now. There was a move in, we're going to talk about Tigger later, but anyway, there was a move in 18th century Judaism towards hellfire and brimstone, and how you had to keep the commandments so that you could, have something in the afterlife. And he was reacting partly to that, but he was also reacting in part to the pogroms of 50 years before his birth, where the Cossacks massacred 80% of the Jews in that area. And he made it his mission to revitalize the joy of the Jewish people. Traveling from village to village, he'd gather them in the markets or wherever he found them and give them a message of hope and joy, teaching that joy is precious to God, that a cardinal rule in serving God is to avoid getting mired down in sadness and depression. One of his followers said that the Baal Shem Tov wiped the tears away from the Jewish people and worked hard to ensure that every Jew was happy simply because he or she was Jewish. And I tell you all this about somebody who lived several hundred years ago because I think the approach can serve us really well. The approach of looking for what is good and joyful in every situation, and maybe now more than in a while, because we live in a world where every bad thing gets plastered all over every screen and every radio wave, and every time we sign into our, network online, it's replayed to us instantly, and then it's replayed and replayed and replayed, and you can't even grab lunch without seeing something splashed across the screen that is convincing at times to the idea that the world's fallen apart. When in reality, of course, violence is less now than it's ever been. Actually, war is less than it's been. But we get so much information about the suffering of life every single day. It's good to remember that there's a different way to do things. Maybe it's good to make a daily practice of joy in our lives. Joy is the thing that keeps our hearts open enough to be able to turn towards the suffering of the world or towards the suffering in the mirror when it's us and do something helpful instead of just getting mired down. Joy is the thing that lets us respond rather than run away. It's the thing that keeps us singing even when all around us is weeping. Because that song can lift the world just a little tiny bit. Because when we're able to point out what is, or seek, or be willing to find the good and joyous even in the midst of suffering, things start to change because we create the world we live in. However, and there are a million stories about this as well, we're spiritual beings in human experience, and part of the fabric of human experience seems to be suffering, or it has been. We have bodies that age and stiffen and achen and sicken and die, and we lose people we love to change, to disagreement, to death. We see people suffering a lot around us, whether they're Syrian refugees or people in dire poverty or people who are not able to fully participate for one reason or another in the way that we live here in the West. And we see environmental catastrophes and it seems like nobody cares. Something might happen to us that will reduce our circumstances to the point where we become fearful. Human life seems to be woven with suffering as part of its fabric. But the one thing that every mystic tells us is that the warp and the weft of that fabric is joy. It's joy. We see, for example, Friday I took my dog out about sunrise, and the sky was that color. I'm not kidding. And that orange color. And it was amazing. I had to just stop in my tracks and look at it because I was so delighted. I mean, it was not pastel, it was vibrant. And it just stayed there for the longest time before, there was enough light to kind of wash out some of the colors. It was amazing. We see the beauty in each other's eyes. We see our young relatives grow up into wonderful human beings, and we see our siblings and those we love just get better and better and better as life goes on. We get to see and feel that deep soul connection when we just let ourselves love each other. And we have high spiritual awareness from time to time that reminds us that whatever it is that created this universe we live in also is what we are. We have glimpses of oneness with everything that exists, and And those moments of connectedness and exaltation bring us straight into the heart of the warp and weft of life, which is joy. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, one of my favorite Ernest Holmes quotes is, "The world has learned all that it could through suffering." We certainly milked it for all it's worth, haven't we? We have done that. Maybe now it's time to start practicing a different way of life. As the Baal Shem Tov said, we do that by discerning the good and the joyous in every single experience that we have. The good and the joyous in everything. One of the Baal Shem Tov's students said, it's like victory over a wrestling opponent. You're wrestling on a mat and one's, you're trying to throw each other down. If one is lazy and lethargic, he will be easily defeated, even if he's stronger than his wrestling partner. So too, it is impossible to conquer that which hinders one's service of God with laziness and lethargy, which are symptoms of sadness and a stone-like dullness of the heart. The only way to win is with alacrity, which derives from joy. So, you wrestlers, take that to heart. Joy will win the match, right? The problem is, how do we do that? How do we do it when we're in the midst of pain or grief, or we see someone else in the midst of suffering or illness? How do we live with joy? Well, we talk about this a lot. As with every other change in our thinking, if we want to let go of an old set of ideas and pick up a new set of ideas, we have to practice. We have to practice. We have to practice when things are good, when there's a lot to be joyful about, right? We have to practice when things are so that when things are we have something to fall back on. We have this practice that says, even within the midst of suffering, there's something in us that knows that goodness and joy are there, even though we can't see them. Even in the midst of angst, even in the midst of darkness, we know that the sun is still shining, right? And pretty soon we're going to see it. So we have to practice when we're not in need of the practice, I think is the idea. And the mystics all tell us that one of the biggest ways to practice becoming joyful, I touched on this last week, is by saying thank you for everything. Everything. Thank you for your, for the life in you that wakes you up in the morning. Thank you for the health within you that let you get here this morning. Thank you for the creative intelligence that kind of keeps you moving towards the next greater expression of your own being. Thank you for the desire to grow that lives within you. I read a wonderful poem just this morning by Mary Oliver, and the last line moved me deeply. She said, "The thing I'm most grateful for is that I take this world so seriously." I thought that was beautiful. I take this world so seriously, meaning she looks into it deeply enough to see the truth every single day through her poetry, through her just being in the world. Gratitude for everything is an extremely powerful force in our lives. It opens us up to discerning the good and joyous within every experience. If we're grateful, we're aware of its presence. There's a Sufi poet, a woman, the only one really that is famous, the only woman poet from the Sufis that is famous, and she said, "You cannot wander anywhere that will not aid you." What a great idea. You cannot wander anywhere that will not aid you. There's a thought for every day. The light days, the happy days, the not so bright days. I cannot wander anywhere that will not aid me. She continued, anything you can touch, God brought into the classroom of your mind. Anything you can touch, God brought into the classroom of your mind. I love that. So saying thank you, even for those opportunities to grow, even those things we call problems, those opportunities for growth that seem to come every single day. Just say thank you for the slow traffic that gives you a chance to stop and drop your shoulders and take a breath. Say thank you for the practice of seeing the divine in the cranky grocery clerk. Cultivate gratitude for every single moment. That's the practice of being able to see the good and joyous in everything. So I'm going to tell you a story about the Baal Shem Tov, who was a rabbi and a legendary one. And so there are lots and lots and lots of stories about him. And it wasn't so much that the Baal Shem Tov was extra special. He was very discerning, and all of his stories show that. And so this story is about he and one of his students, Reb Zev Wolf, once went to visit a very poor man. They were gathering money up for something or other, and the Baal Shem Tov said, I have to have 18 rubles for a very important cause. Well, the man didn't have that much money, but it was the Baal Shem Tov making the request, kind of like the Pope, you know. And so he sold his cow, and he sold some furniture, and he came up with 18 rubles, and he gave the money to the Baal Shem Tov. And Reb Zev just sort of watched this transaction. A couple of days later, this man's rent came due, and he didn't have the money because he'd given it to the Baal Shem Tov. And so he was evicted. And he thought, you know, I can't catch a break in this village. I'm going to go somewhere else. So he found a little hut in a different village and sold some more stuff and managed to buy a cow. And he sold the cow's milk, and that kept him going. A couple of months later, the local landowner, the squire, his cow got sick. And so they couldn't drink the milk. And one of the squire's servants knew about this man who just moved in, so he went to him and bought milk. And he brought it back to the squire, and the squire drank it and said, this is exceptional milk. You go back and tell that guy that I will pay handsomely for the privilege of being his only customer. And so every day, the villager brought milk to the manor, and every day the squire commented on how great it was, and over time they developed a relationship. The squire became very fond of this man and started to talk to him about his business and began to turn over to him responsibilities within the running of the area, because he owned not only land but the village itself in those days. He just really trusted this man for his reliability and faithful service. And over time, the relationship became so deep that the landowner, who always wanted to go abroad, turned everything over, all the management and administration and deeds, over to this villager and took off, knowing it was left in good hands. So a couple of years later, Reb Zev is going around at the behest of the Baal Shem Tov, gathering up money for captives and prisoners. And he had everything he needed but 300 rubles. So he met with the village rabbi, who was all dressed up, and he said, where are you going? And the rabbi said, there's a group of the town dignitaries that are going to go meet with the landlord of this city, who is going to be visiting us today, and he's Jewish. Why don't you come along? I'm sure he'll contribute to your cause. So Reb Zev went with the rabbi, and the landlord was very warm in his greeting, and he paid particular attention to Reb Zev. And after a while, he took Reb Zev aside and said, you don't know who I am, do you? Here's your 300 rubles. Sent him off, and it was not until he was walking back into the door to return to the Baal Shem Tov that he understood what had happened. That last 300 rubles were donated by the poor villager from whom we got the 18 rubles years ago. And the Baal Shem Tov said, I extracted that enormous sum from him in his difficult circumstances because a change of fortune was waiting for him, but not in this place. He had to be brought to the end of his rope so that he'd be forced to move, settle elsewhere. And that's exactly what happened. And the rest you already know, he said. This is one of hundreds and hundreds of stories from the mystics about what happens when whatever it is that's going on, we simply trust it and say thank you for it. It's leading us into our next greater expression. The Buddha said, no step on the spiritual path is ever wasted. We can't go backwards. We're always evolving. We're always growing into whatever's coming next, whatever expression is for us next. And when we can even have a tiny bit of that trust, then we're open to perceiving the good and the joyous in every circumstance. When something difficult comes along, if we can just remember that even there, whether we can discern it or not, there's good and there's joyousness, then there's something in us that says, I'll find it. I'll find it. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but I'll find it. So I have a challenge for you, and I'm going to take it too. How about for the next 30 days? You spend a few minutes at the end of each day looking for the good and the joyous. Write it down. Make note of the things you're grateful for. And when something happens that you're not grateful for yet, be willing. Be willing to discern the good and the joyous. Teach your kids how to look for the good and the joyous in all things. Because once we open our minds to the fact that goodness and joy exist, that good is to be found, that God is to be found in every single experience, then the divine spark within us opens our eyes. We don't have to work it. We just have to say yes to the possibility that it's there. That's all we have to do. We can't wander anywhere that does not aid us. We cannot wander anywhere that does not aid us. So, for the next 30 days, let's be the happy ones. Let's be the happy ones. Let's be Tigger. Let's bounce with joy and get excited about life. Let us create the world, the life, the experience that we want of goodness and joy, because it's from that overflow of us individually that we begin to create a world of joy and goodness for everybody. We decide together what life is all about. And if we start to see and call forth the joyfulness, the joyousness, and the good in everything, we start to see it. The people next to us start to see it. It just ripples out. This is how we change the world. Everything starts right here, right here. So, maybe in 30 days we'll all check back with each other. We'll have a check-in Sunday where we all check in to see how much new joy and how much new goodness we discovered in our own lives. So join me in just taking a little inventory at the end of the day. Was I one of the happy ones today? Let's be the happy ones. And now join me, if you will, in just turning within for a moment of contemplation. As I turn within, I remember there is within me a place of such joy, a place of deep peace. Sometimes it's very small, and I have to open my heart entirely to find it, but I know it is always there. There is within each one of us a spark of the very life of God, a spark of divine peace, a spark of boundless joy, a place of goodness and wholeness and perfection. As I rest in this place, I know that truly this is all that really exists, is this field of consciousness and love and joy and peace we call God, Great Spirit, Allah, the universe, intelligence, 10,000 names or more we call it, because it is something so big we can't really name it. We can only catch glimpses of it and at times enter into it fully, knowing we are one with it. And from this place of knowing that it exists within me and within all people, I realize that all that any one of us does is the expression of this divine intelligence, this infinite joy, this boundless good. All that we do is the expression of God right here and right now. We are its hands and voices and hearts. And as I lean into that truth, I know for each one of us that anything that may block our view of that which is good and joyous in whatever befalls us today, that which blocks our view of that simply falls away, so that we see clearly there is indeed good and joy, no matter what, in every situation. And as we start to see that within our mind's eye, we start to see it in our day-to-day experience. It grows. It becomes the majority in our lives. It holds us up in time of suffering and says, remember, here too there is good. Here too there is joyousness. Here too there is God. And knowing that this is the truth of who we are, I just say thank you. I give thanks for this community and everyone in it. I give thanks for our time of celebration together this morning. I give thanks for that moment where we just let ourselves love everyone, where we just love each other and know that here too is God, that here too is joy, that here too is goodness. I give thanks for this amazing adventure we call life, with its ups and downs and ins and outs, and opportunities to grow into those new eyes that see goodness, that see joy everywhere, in every moment. And from this place of deepest gratitude, I simply release these words knowing the universe has already said yes to them, for there is nowhere I can go that the universe does not aid me. So I release them knowing it's already so, and we say together, and so it is.
I am just a thread, a simple thread in this glorious web of life. We are all just drops within a stream, flowing towards an ocean of light. We may forget where we come from, we may forget where we're going to. I might not see that you're a reflection of me as much as I'm a reflection of you. Just a seed, a blessed seed with eternity unfolding in me. And I pray that as I grow, I will reveal the love that illuminates my soul. When I remember where I come from, when I remember of me as much as I'm a reflection of you. Simple prayer, may I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer, may I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer, become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become
Amen. Amen. We have an opportunity now to simply count our blessings. Count our blessings. To be grateful for all that we have and all that we are and all that we give from. We have an opportunity to give to support the work of this community, but also just to stop and think and remember and recall and count up all that we receive from the love that is in our lives. The love within us, the love in our families, the love in this center. All of the gifts of life. So that when the basket passes through your hands, whether you're able to give or not, please bless the abundance of our center so that we can continue to grow and thrive and do the work and become all that we came here to be. So let's affirm, gratefully I give with an attitude of abundance.
Gratefully I give with an attitude of abundance.
For I know that as I give, so do I receive.
For I know that as I give, so do I receive.
And so it is.
And so it is.
I always feel so much better after I've been here with you all. It's great. I have a couple of announcements to just point your way. They're almost, I think all of them, are on the back of your bulletin insert under events and activities. First of all, coming up this Friday night, if you're free, come join us for soup and bread and pie and cider and decorate the place. It's always a really fun evening. We just spend a couple of hours, making everything pretty for Christmas. There's a sign-up sheet right over at the Welcome Center. And then next Sunday, December 6th at 2 p.m., there's going to be a gingerbread house making party here. All the materials will be provided. There's more information, again, in your bulletin and a sign-up sheet over at the Welcome Center. And we'll maybe even have those toy dinosaurs for those of us who can't glue things together so they stay. If they crash, you just stick a dinosaur in it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It works. It works. December 13th, which is 2 weeks from today. Wow. December already. Woohoo! 2 weeks from today is our holiday luncheon, which we will be providing the turkey and turkey alternatives, and you all provide the rest. It's a potluck, so there's a sign-up sheet over there, just so we have a vague idea of what's coming, so we can fill in the gaps. Please plan on joining us after service, December 13th. Okay, Tigger now. There's an organization here called the Care House, and they are in need of Tigger and his friends. So it's time for Teddy Bear Ministry again. Bring in a new or very gently used stuffed animal, put it on a chair. We get to love it up and pray it up for a couple of weeks, and then we'll take them all over to the Care House. I don't know that I can part with Tigger, but I'll buy a replacement for him and give that one away. Tigger was a gift from a friend. So this is simply a way of sending our love off to some kids who need it. We usually take them to either the widow's home downtown, and they love them, or we give them to sheriffs to put in their cars for domestic violence calls to give to the kids. Care House does a lot of really wonderful stuff for kids. It's kind of a centralized location for all things family, I think, related. So grab an extra stuffed animal while you're out Christmas shopping. Bring it in. We'll love it up for a while, and then we'll take them over to the Care House. Everything else is on the back of your bulletin. So I'm just going to ask the practitioners who are available for prayer to just stand briefly so we can identify them. They are all around here in their beautiful stoles. Thank you all for being here today. Each one of these people has worked for a long, long time in consciousness to be able to see the good and the joy and the truth of you even when you can't, or of your situation even when you can't. And they give you this gift on Sundays. So if there's anything at all you're struggling with in your life that you'd like prayer for, simply walk up to one of them and ask for it, and they will take you to a more private corner, and we'll pray with you. We call it a 1-minute miracle because prayer works. And so take advantage of their willingness to be there for you. You can also leave a written prayer request in the prayer chest back by the door if you'd rather do that. Take advantage of that as well. All of the practitioners will pick those up and pray for them. So I think that's it for today. Have a wonderful, are we all recovering from pie overdose? I know I am. Boy, There's a lot of pie in my house this week. It was great. It was wonderful. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Let's stand up for our closing affirmation, our closing song, which is I release and I let go. The wholeness of the universe is seeking expression through me.
The wholeness of the universe is seeking expression through me.
Its nature is goodness,
Its nature is goodness,
truth, beauty, and wisdom. I allow it to flow through me.
I allow it to flow through me.
Today and always.
Today and always.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Have a fabulous week.
Woo!